All right, we are live. What's happening, my friends? I'm here with the man, the myth, the legend. Appreciate you hanging through with me on that first StreamYard. Finally just swapped over to Zoom, so that was I don't know how smooth that was, but it worked. It worked.
It worked, man. We're here.
Yeah, we are, and I appreciate you. It's great finally getting to catch up. It's been a while. Always love learning from you, love studying from you and all that good stuff. And as a quick way to get started here, Mario, give just a 60-second background. Please brag about yourself. I know you love bragging about yourself. And what really were some of the steps and what led you into where you're at in your career today?
Shoot, man. That's a great question. I would probably say I didn't plan to be here, man. I didn't plan to be here. That's probably pretty important to understand. If I had spent, this is 22 years now in sales and sales leadership. And of those 22 years, 18 of them were spent in corporate. And what I expected to have happen was I would somehow end up in the CRO, CSO type of role. And that was my trajectory. I also had a plan B, and the plan B was I wanted to be a speaker. And I said, in either direction I could go. I guess it was October, almost 5 years ago, October 2015. So 1 month from now, I landed a phenomenal opportunity. LinkedIn asked me to speak at their annual users conference, talking about how we were able to launch a digital selling program that drove two things that had never happened before in their enterprise history of their customers. Then and still owns the record today, as far as we know. And that is 100% of our reps. And when I sat in the seat, were able to drive 100% of rep adoption, and 100% of our reps were able to attribute one sales opportunity to the open pipeline. And it had never been done before. So they asked me to speak, and brand equity looks like this, Connor, which is a straight line walking into speaking at one of the largest social media companies in the world at their annual users conference. If you talk for 48 minutes about what you do, all of a sudden it goes like this, right? And it's a straight line up. And no joke, literally an hour after I spoke, the CEO of a Fortune 80 company reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'd like to fly you in to talk to my executive lead team." So with that in mind, 3 months later, I was out on my own, and that's what started business entrepreneurship. So I really had no plan. I had no idea what would be in store for me, but I left corporate and I started my own company, and here I am now, CEO of Vingresso with my three co-founders, Bernie Borges, Vivica Von Rosen, who was also on your show, and Kurt Shaver, and we've now become the largest modern sales training company globally.
So the entrepreneurship route is interesting, and coming from your sales background, were your family mentors for you in becoming an entrepreneur? Like, did you have entrepreneurship in your family growing up?
Not at all. No entrepreneurship in the family whatsoever. In fact, everybody, I was born and raised in a Mexican family. My family was not very well off at all. There's actually an interesting story. When I went to apply to college, each college application for the UC system cost $40 to apply to the college. And I only had $41 total. So I only could apply to one college, and that I chose UC Berkeley, and I ended up actually getting in. So that kind of gives you a background about my background. My dad was a truck driver, and my mom ended up staying at home with 5 kids.
And was the ultimate intent, was sales the ultimate goal out of that, or is there another career path you're thinking?
No, I got into sales by accident. So this is an interesting story. You may be too young to remember, but for some people listening in, there was an old retail camera store by the name of Ritz Camera Centers. And Ritz Camera Centers was where you used to take your 35 millimeter film, and you brought it in, and they would process and develop the film and print your little 4x6 pictures. So I was a photo finisher. And one day, a gentleman by the name of Hunter, I don't even know if he's still alive, but he was the regional manager. He had this weird looking toupee. You could always tell he had this toupee on because it didn't, go all the way over. So we used to laugh at it a lot. But then one day I actually was like, I felt super bad because he asked if he could meet with me. He called me up and said, "Hey, I'm on my way into the store. I want to meet with you about some sales numbers." And I was like, uh-oh, sales numbers. Like, what did I do wrong? And I thought it was something bad, right? So he pulls me aside inside the store and he says, listen, I don't know if you noticed this, but for the last year, in our terms of revenue numbers, you're in our top 3 sales performers category across the entire region, across all stores. But you're at one of the smallest stores we've got, and you're a photo finisher. And I was like, I don't understand what you mean. Like, what do you mean by that? And he was like, well, what I mean is that you're selling more than our full-time sales folks who are at some of our marquee stores. What are you doing? And I said, I don't know what I'm doing. What do you mean? What am I doing? He's like, help me understand how you're moving so much camera equipment at the same time as being a full-time, or not, I wasn't full-time, a part-time photo finisher. And so I really didn't know how to answer that question. So he started asking me questions to help me assess what it was that I was doing. Well, here's what I ended up learning. Whenever we printed pictures, we would always take off the copy of the front box. And so that they were never embarrassed, we would turn the picture box around and we'd pull out the pictures and show it to them. Like, are these your pictures, right? And they would look at the pictures. Now, some of them were things that you don't want to see, but whenever that was like that, I always put that picture on the front to embarrass them. But I'd always show the picture.
And that's how you close the deal. It was pure blackmail. It was
exactly right. Exactly right. So, but what I started doing and unbeknownst to me, I started looking at all the bad pictures, because as a photo finisher, you had to go through each picture and you had to color correct the pictures. It was cyan, magenta, yellow. Those are the color coding. And I would take the bad pictures and put them at the top. And I would show it to them and they'd be like, oh no, that one didn't come through, or oh, this, right? And so I would say, yeah, it didn't happen. It didn't come through. And they were like, shoot, well, what am I doing wrong? And I would ask them, well, what kind of camera do you have? And they would tell me, and I was like, well, that's the problem. You can't do high-speed camera shots with that type of camera. You need a different type of camera. And they would say, well, what type of camera do I need? And I was like, well, if you were interested, here's a camera. And I'd pull one out and be like, this is one if you're going to be doing a lot of sports shots with you and your kids. So inevitably what happened was I started telling customers, I started helping customers. And they would, like, if I said, are you going to continue taking sports shots? Are you going to continue taking, drama photos in the dark, picture shots of sceneries? And if they answered yes, then I would say, well, this is what you need. So inevitably, customers would then turn around and say, well, how much does that cost? And I would say, well, this is how much it costs. And they would say, well, okay, well, why don't I get that? And I would say, great. And then I would sell them the warranty. And they'd be like, well, what's the value? Warranties, they never work. And I'm like, well, actually, I'm just a photo finisher. I would always say, I'm just a photo finisher. But this one's a really good warranty, and here's why. And in that time, we covered everything. You dropped it and broke it, accidental damage. Come on in and you bring it in pieces. Bring me half the camera, and you would get a full replacement. They're like, really? That? I'm like, yeah, it's a good one. It really works. I have it on my stuff. My aunt has it. My mom has it. Blah blah blah. So that's how I started selling. And so Hunter says to me after this conversation, he goes, so what you're doing is you're helping customers. And I said, huh. Yeah, I guess I am. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm just helping customers. And there you have it. That's when I coined the term, sales is the art of helping. That's it. That's what we think. That's how I used to think about sales. And so a few months later, I applied to move to Ritz Camera Centers in Berkeley, because I actually got in, believe it or not, to UC Berkeley, to Cal, off of one application. I got in. And I applied as a photo finisher, and he came in, he says, I've got, good news and I've got bad news. And I said, well, what's the bad news? He says, I can't approve your application for a transfer. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I need that job, because unfortunately I had to pay my own way through college. And so I needed to work. And I was like, Hunter, I need this job. Why can't you approve me? And he says, because you're not a photo finisher. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm not a photo finisher? Yes, I am. He says, no, I can't approve you as a photo finisher, but I will approve you with a raise and commissions to be a salesperson. And I was like,
this guy just likes to mess with you as much as he can.
Yeah, exactly. He just messed with me. And so there you go. I got transferred over to the second highest producing store in the region, which was Berkeley. And I started selling. I started killing it. And then I eventually got transferred to the highest producing store, which was out of Rockridge in Oakland. And that's how I started my sales career. So it was basically my boy Hunter with a toupee, who basically was like, what are you doing? And once I realized what I was doing and he helped me see that, then I started really slaying it in terms of sales. And I just moved into that art of helping. And that's what I started teaching all the other sellers. Grab the photo finishing, open the box, look at the pictures, put the bad ones in the front, show them, are these your pictures? Yes, they are my pictures. Oh no, they didn't come out right. Yeah, they didn't, right? And repeat the cycle. And it just kept happening and happening and happening. And there you go. That's the history.
I've been having these conversations so much too. Why do you feel even today, even senior sales guys in their, late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s even, why do they still have such a difficult time wrapping their arms around that and sales?
Look, there's so many reasons why people are challenged with sales, and it could be from sales prospecting to the virtual sales environment. It could be learning how to build relationships, especially a virtual selling. I mean, this is much more difficult, I think, today to sell than ever before. To closing, right? Like, how do you close? I think one of the biggest problems that sellers have today is they're not interested in putting in the work that it takes. That's one. Number two, they don't realize that sales really is the art of helping. You've got to find the problem that the customer has and be maniacally focused on, what do I do to help you solve that problem? And what do you get if you solve this problem? Like, what's in it for you? And then really building that relationship. And a lot of sellers still to this very day, they show up to a meeting in a virtual environment, right? We all live in a virtual environment. In fact, Connor, this is kind of one of the most interesting things to think about. Never before in our sales and buyer alignment history has the selling motion been the exact same as the buying motion. They completely overlay. What do I mean by that? Well, sellers and buyers today are digitally connected, socially engaged, mobile attached, and video hungry. All four of those elements of today's modern buyer are completely overlaid on top of the selling motion. Never before has that been like that. But yet, sellers still show up to this very day to a virtual meeting with their camera turned off. Are you kidding me? Like, wait a minute. The camera has got to be turned on. And so we don't think about, how do I build the virtual relationship with my buyer? Sellers and leaders specifically are challenged with the idea in a virtual selling environment of, how do I utilize tools and technology correctly to be able to engage that particular buyer? For example, most of our sellers saw anywhere between a less than 10%, generally around a 3% response rate on cold calling or email engagement. Less than 3%. That number has been in place for the last 10 years and it hasn't moved much. So when the virtual world came as a result of the pandemic, people started taking what they were doing here, bad email practices, bad engagement practices, bad messages, and they just moved it from this channel to this channel, which was to social or to video. Or worse yet, they didn't engage on these channels at all. And all they kept doing is flooding people's boxes to the point that now it's become complete noise. So I think those are some of the challenges.
That's one hurdle too, is like first getting them to adopt those digital channels and then actually getting them to use them the right way. Because you could still, cold calling may still work, but if you're still doing it the wrong way, it's still going to be a shitty approach for you.
Yeah, no doubt. If you look at the whole world of sales itself, there's what I call pre-hello. So it's all the things that you're doing to be able to get the hello. And then there's from hello to close, and all the things you got to do from the hello to the close to make a deal happen.
Right.
I would argue that 60 to 70% of our effort is right here in getting to the hello. Getting to the hello. That's our biggest challenge right now. In fact, we did a LinkedIn research project using LinkedIn polls, and I was just doing a keynote for the Sales 3.0 conference, and I asked the same exact question that we asked on the LinkedIn polls. And basically, the question is, what's the hardest part of selling right now during COVID-19. And in our survey, 59% of respondents said the hardest part was sales prospecting, not closing a deal, which was actually second, 27%, and then all the middle stuff in terms of the sales cycle. 59%. Now, I did that same poll to thousands of people as the final keynote speaker of the Sales 3.0 conference with Selling Power, Gerhard Schwartner, and I asked the same exact question. 72% said prospecting was the hardest part right now. And that's really very difficult. One of the reasons why we, Vengresso, exist to teach sellers how to digitally engage in today's digital modern selling era. And that is one of the hardest things. But what we fail to realize is that people are people, and we have to bring to life our engagement. And that includes the use of things like video, the use of text messaging. One of our own reps today sent me a note saying, "Hey, I'm not getting a response back from one of our prospective buyers." And he said, "So I'm thinking of sending him a video message, of which we already sent a video message, and then we sent an email message, and then we made a phone call." And I said, "No, text him. Use the omni-channel to create engagement. Text, shoot him a text." And if we can do that, then we can, if we can leverage an omni-channel approach to selling, we're going to find the buyer where the buyer is willing to engage with us. And those are the things that have become really hard because every buyer is different. 100%. You may want to do text. She may want to do email. He may want to do, may accept video, but she may only want to have a phone conversation. So our job has definitely gotten much more complex, for sure.
It's like you're so close to it, especially salespeople. You're so close to it. Like, I just need to get that meeting. So you keep sending that email, and then you send another follow-up email. Don't send a follow-up email. And even in your own organization, just taking that step back and being like, "Oh shit, I could text somebody," I guess.
Exactly.
And something else you mentioned too, like even just turning your camera on. A lot of these B2B sales, which is the world that we both play in, is all about the relationship. And meeting people in person was the way to do business, especially before COVID. Now it's not even an option. So again, like, how are you helping those who are listening to this? What are some of the tools to get over that hump of like, turn your camera on, send a video? It's no different from meeting people in person, so much so. Like, where are you finding the bottleneck with that is, and what are the tools that you're giving them to overcome that?
Leaders. One word, leaders. Look, most of us that are 45 and older, we are leading organizations and salespeople. And it's the leaders themselves who did not grow up in a digitally connected, socially engaged, mobile attached, video hungry environment. We cut our chops, we did our selling, we built relationships through the field, knocking on doors, going to events, shaking hands, doing that relationship building. And we are now leading teams that are only virtually engaged, only socially engaged, and or only digitally connected to our buyers. And we have no clue what is the right way to be able to engage. We have no clue when we say to a rep, "Well, did you send them an email? Did you get hold of them? Did you call them? Did you pick up the phone?" We stop there. Then we say, "Well, just connect with them on LinkedIn." Do you even know what it is that you're saying to the rep of what to say on LinkedIn? Go engage with one of their posts. How do you engage? Send them a video. Well, did you like cold calling? You have up to 30 seconds to be able to capture someone's attention to continue that conversation. Do you know what the number is for a video? 7 to 15 seconds. So what are you having your rep do and say in those 7 to 15 seconds to capture that buyer's attention? We don't have a clue. And so here we are trying to lead teams, and we are not inspecting what we expect because we don't even know what to expect. That's the problem.
So let's dive into that and break that down a bit more, because you've touched on the right way a number of times. What is that? How should people be crafting their messaging for text when they got the camera in front of them and they're about to send a video to their prospect? What should they actually be saying that starts that hello process?
It's a great question. Well, first of all, that's part of our entire Modern Sales Mastery program, which includes our Selling with LinkedIn training program. You can go to moresalescalls.com, and there you'll see our individual on-demand training program, and it's the annual membership fee for that. And so if you're a seller, it's not very expensive, the annual membership. Like, go out and buy it. It's a few $100, right? And go get that. We'll give you all the training, all the support, all the discussion forum, and we'll teach you how to do that. In addition to that, if you're a leader, then you want to be looking about how to do this very specifically for your sales training, for your sales team, and implementing a sales training program that helps change behavior over the course of time. Not just LinkedIn, but look at video, look at everything digitally centric. And then you want to be looking at your sellers and saying, okay, how are you engaging with today's modern buyer? What is the content that you're sharing? All of that is training that is required. Look, we trained people for years, sometimes even weeks, in terms of a training program on how to cold call, relationship building, contract negotiation, the art of challenger sale. Like, all these things we train, but yet we don't train on the hardest part of selling, which is prospecting. Hello, train
And the content. I think prospecting is one thing, but the content of prospecting is the most difficult. I found personally also to just really nail home.
Yeah, well, I was on a call today with one of our sellers, and we do a post meeting debrief, usually 5 to 15 minutes max after every call. What worked? What didn't work? What did we do? What did you notice? Did we find the big fish on the wall? I don't know if you're familiar with that. We teach about the big fish on the wall. In the old days,
yeah.
Everybody would know about this. Who's like the old school seller who used to walk into the office. You walk in the office, you're looking for the big fish on the wall picture, right? You walk in, you're looking for the picture on the desk, and you're like, oh, where was that taken at? Oh, where were you at, right? To build rapport. Well, now in a virtual environment, you're looking for the big fish on the wall on someone's LinkedIn profile. Or a great one today. I walked into a meeting, and the individual had gray hair just like I did, right? We're both 40, the 45 and older category. And about 5 minutes into the discussion, he's like, man, I just got to stop. He's like, your gray hair is pretty fly. I really like it. And I was like, well, man, I'll say the same thing about you, because you're almost pretty much all silver as well. And then I joked around. I said, but here's my little secret. Ever since I became CEO of Ingresso, I started getting this bald spot in the back, and it's just getting bigger and bigger. I'm afraid to use the Just for Men, black hair dye, because I don't want the rest of it to fall out. So we started laughing, right? Like that was the big fish on the wall, building some sort of rapport, right? So you've got to find those opportunities and do that in a digitally engaged environment. But going back to your question of what do we do? Let me give you one piece of information. Other than you got to help your sellers be trained to be digital sellers. There's some great resources. If you go to the Vingresso YouTube channel. If you go to Vingresso YouTube, so I'm trying to think of the
probably just YouTube /Vingresso or something.
There
like
you
that,
go.
Right?
We'll go with that. VNGRESO.
Just type Vingresso into YouTube. You'll find it. I guarantee you'll find it.
That'll solve the problem.
There you go.
We just published a clip of me training at one of our quarterly trainings to our sales teams, and one of them is on what we call the PVC Sales Methodology. P as in PVC piping, right? The whole PVC piping. We call it the PVC Sales Methodology. Now, with this in mind, it's focused on 3 elements. The P for personalization, the V for value. And how do you bring value? It's with content, like companies like yours, right? Active Blogs. You got to bring that content to help that buyer understand how to solve whatever specific problem that your product or service can solve for, the business problem. And then C, have a CTA. Now, if you look at the P for personalization, most people forget about this concept when creating a message. There's 2 ways to personalize. You either, one, personalize to the individual, commonalities, mutual connections, the big fish on the wall that you found somewhere on their profile, something that will allow you to be able to engage with that person. Maybe something they posted, something about their company, something like that. Not everybody can find personalized content for the individual. So now what you do is your lowest common denominator, the default is personalization to the buyer persona. Okay. If you're a leader watching this, in your next sales meeting, your next team meeting, you need to ask your leaders or reps the following question. in 1 to 2 sentences, what business problem do we solve? I guarantee to you that 8 out of 10 of your sellers will not be able to answer that question. Example, for Vingresso, what problem do we solve? We help sales leaders and sales teams create more sales conversations through digital selling, skills training. Okay, what are the problem we solve? More sales conversations. That's the problem. And what is the result of that? Increase in sales pipeline. So the 2 problems that we open up with when we're talking to a VP of sales is, would you like to have your team create more sales conversations? And do you have a big enough pipeline? It's either yes or no. If it's a yes, we continue on with the discussion, and that brings us to the V for value. If it's a no, I've got all the leads in the world. I don't need any more help with my sellers being able to create more sales conversations, and my pipeline is already big enough, then guess what? I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want to waste my time, because I can't solve a business problem for you. But if it's yes, we move on to the next phase, which is the V for value. How do you bring value to that buyer? And we always got to be thinking about the problem that we solve for somebody. We got to bring content to that. Example, on the same line that I was just using for personalization, we solved the problem of more sales conversations and growing the sales pipeline. I might follow up with a blog article that says, if you are having this problem, here's a great blog article on 5 ways that you can use sales video to be able to increase your sales pipeline. Boom, right? That's one. The second one is a webinar. And as a webinar that, and if I was talking as a rep, that our CEO did on 3 things you must implement in your sales prospecting strategies for your sellers to be able to create more conversations with today's virtual buyer. Watch this in your next sales team meeting. There you go. Boom. Now that's 2 valuable pieces
Call to
of
action.
Now we move on to the call to action. Most reps want to drive that CTA to, let's book a meeting, 15 minutes. First of all, 15-minute meeting is stupid. Stop the 15-minute meeting.
What the hell? What are you going to get done in 15 minutes?
It takes me 7 minutes just to build rapport, to find the big fish on the wall, right? I mean, it took me like 5 minutes just to talk about my hair with the prospect I was talking about earlier, and the gray hair, right? I mean, like that was a back and forth discussion, right? Just for men, the big bald spot, all that stuff.
And I'm glad you came back around to that, because that was really my next big thing, and probably in a lot of people's mind too, is like, what am I asking for? Am I asking for time? Am I asking to watch something? Like, what is that ask? How do I get that ask to get to a $100,000, $500,000 sale from social?
So, and it's not social. This PVC sales methodology can be applied to social. It can be applied to a text.
Yeah, just digital altogether.
Any digital communication, even a phone call. Think about this. Do you have the PVC lined out for a phone conversation that you're going to do within less than 1 minute, right? All right. So we now go to the C for the CTA. Most of us want to book the meeting. Now, if we could walk away and book all these meetings, life would be easy and sales prospecting wouldn't be that hard. Guess what? It's the hardest thing that reps are reporting in today's virtual selling era. Okay, so let's think about some other things we should be driving towards. And that includes, how about a question that creates engagement? For example, I just did the first part, which is here's how we commonly, two things that we help sales VPs for. Here are 2 pieces of information that might help you be able to create that. I close with the question, Connor, my question to you is are you struggling with creating more sales conversations, and do you need to build a bigger sales pipeline? Let me know. Okay, if you say yes, you and I are probably booking a meeting. If you say no or ignore me, then you probably don't necessarily have that problem. And I'm not saying that you stop there, because that's 1 touch point out of the 7 or 8 that you might need to make. But the point is you lead with pain, you lead with the problem, but you have to know what is the business problem that you solve for with your particular product or service. And it has to tie to a business pain. So the CTA could be a question, it could be a call to action, it could be invite them to an event, or wait, let me repeat that. The CTA is a call to action. The CTA could be a question, it could be inviting to an event, it could be something that's going to solicit their opinion, or there we go, now I'm right. Ask for the meeting. And I'm not saying don't, I'm saying it might be. So we as a selling in the selling motion, we have to understand that most people aren't going to go on the date the first time we ask.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. So we have to massage it along in that process. And the problem is leaders are needing and wanting results right now. Well, let me just tell you something. It's something that Kurt Shaver says all the time. Hey, you should have taught your digital selling skills 3 years ago. That was the best time to have taught your sellers how to be able to engage in today's era. But guess what? The second best time is right now. Right. So I would love to get
there's not even a choice now. I mean, literally you have to. COVID pushed everything into this arena, but that means more opportunity to reach more buyers. I mean, literally more people are online than ever before, even right when COVID hit. So, but you touched on that. That's important too. People get deterred. They don't want to bug people. And I think that's where understanding the omni-channel approach that you're talking about really comes to play, because if you're doing a little text, a little email, a little call, a little, social media and all that good stuff, like you'd be so surprised that your buyer's probably just busy. Like they're not ignoring you or don't even like you or want to talk to you. They're just busy. And you just got to keep at it.
Yeah. And I'll give you another resource. If people go to the website, Pvc Sales Method, .com, the PVC sales method, they'll be able to really they'll be able to download this whole entire guide. And there's also a great video on YouTube as well called the PVC Sales Methodology. So pvcsalesmethod.com, and that will help individuals take all the information I just gave and apply it to their individual sales practices. And leaders too. I went back to we're not inspecting what we expect because we don't know what to expect. So leaders have the same issue, and they should probably download that as well.
So Mario, pivoting here real quick towards the tail end, I am fascinated, and I've been studying you for years since I just, got turned on to you. God, I think it was probably 6 years ago or something like that. When I started following you on LinkedIn, we got connected on LinkedIn and literally just been watching you build Vengresso, and it's been really cool to see. And one thing that's really stood out to me is this empire that you're building out of what I would call and others would consider like coopetition. And talk a little bit about that. Like what in your mind as a entrepreneur said, you know what, instead of going at this alone, I'm going to go and actually find my competitors and build a company together. And what was that process like in the beginning?
Well, that's a great question. And it's really, that saying, bigger is better. I do believe bigger is better. And in this case, there was, if you looked at the sales training world and you look at digital sales training specifically, there was not a whole lot of folks that were focusing in on the prospecting side. In fact, most sales training companies focus in from the hello to the close, not what you do to get the hello. But guess what? That's the hardest part about the selling process, is to get that hello. So, 4 years ago, I looked back and I said, God, there's got to be an easier way to be able to make something happen in this industry and be able to build something. And I reached out. I was on on the board for another company. And I reached out to one of the guys that I was on the board for. I said, hey, who did you work with as a strategist to put all this together? And he told me who it was. And I reached out to him and we had a conversation. And I said, listen, this is what I'm thinking. Private equity companies are constantly doing what's called roll-ups. So they bring a whole entire portfolio set of companies underneath the umbrella, and then they roll them all up, and they eventually, mix and match and merge and all that good stuff, right? Can that be done on a small business scale? And he was like, absolutely. So we came up with a strategy, and we put together a roll-up strategy, and we consolidated 4 companies all into one. It was really, really difficult. It was a lot to chew off on at one time, but we did it, and we were successful at it. And the whole idea was, man, if you look at your competitors, you go out to your competitors and you reach out to them and say, do you want something bigger? You can have 100% of this piece of pie, or you could have 20% of this piece of pie. Like, which one is better for you, right? And what do you want to do with your business? And if you want to grow your business, if you want to astronomically scale the company, if you hope to sell the company one day, can you get there by yourself, or can you do it with a crew behind you? So that's exactly what we did. We started really growing the business that way through rolling it up as a private equity roll-up strategy, essentially setting us up for being acquired and or picked up on for another organization who says, hey, I want this digital prospecting piece in my training portfolio, as an example. Or a software technology vendor says, oh my God, these guys have 100,000 people on their database, and they've got a social media reach of 50 million people, and they've built a community. I want that in my business, so I can leverage that for the software technology piece. So, and it might come from things that you otherwise wouldn't think about. For example, I could look at agencies and say, man, marketing agencies, that group, that environment is like super hard to sell into right now. People are cutting back dollars and it's very expensive. Well, why don't you bring another piece of the portfolio into the sales side, because you already own marketing? Go into the sales side. I could go into agency models. I can do all kinds of stuff now that I've created this roll up, and I've got all the funds and money and dollars and go to market and branding and all that stuff coming underneath one company and one layer.
Do you go out and raise capital or just loans to like acquire, or it's more of a collaborative with those partners? You approach them, sell the bigger vision.
It's equity swaps. You sell them the vision. And again, going back to what do you want in life? Some people love lifestyle business. If you like lifestyle business, hallelujah, go at it, right? Do what you got to do. But if you're looking for something bigger, better, and brighter in your future, then you either are going to have a plan to scale that and blow it up, or you look at becoming part of something bigger. And it's what we've always done. You're part of a team. You want to be able to play, you play as a team, right? There's no I in team. So that's the way you got to look at it is, and it might not come from the likely suitor, but one of your potential likely suitors would be go to your competition. If you go to your competition and have an honest conversation of, do you want to do something bigger? Then what you're looking at is a no dollar exchange to be able to make something happen. You do what's called an equity swap. And that's how you make it happen. And that's how you roll and scale these things up. And it's super easy to do. The hard part is the hardest part is balancing through people's individual egos, right? To be able to say, as soon as someone says, well, if I do this, then I'm no longer the CEO of my company. Okay, well, you might not be, or you might be. Like, do you have more of a skill set? Like, the mindset is you got to throw your ego out the door. And if your skill set is blah, whatever, operations, well, then guess what? You probably shouldn't be the CEO. Yeah, but then I won't have that title anymore. Well, do you want to have 20% of $10 million, or do you want to have 100% of $1 million? Like,
so just back to the bigger picture. And I know, a handful of the folks at Vangresso. And so that was the difficulty in the beginning, was overcoming that, like, who's going to be CEO, captain the ship, and how were you able to eventually overcome that?
Well, interestingly enough, part of this process is looking at cultural fit. And a lot of people weeded themselves out. I pitched 14 people. I brought in 7 partners in originally, and we exited 3 from the firm, and we ended up with 4, right? Wow. So I had a 50% hit ratio. Those 50% that I originally started with almost 4 years ago, they had to have the same mindset. And everybody needed to say, look, I don't want to be CEO, or I don't want to be the chief revenue officer. I don't want to be, I remember Vivica. Vivica said to me, look, if I do this, I need you to know one thing about me. Okay, what is it? I am not an operations person. Don't ask me to build process. Don't ask me to be operationally focused. Don't ask me to put file management and structure and HR and blah, blah, blah. That's not me. So you get to learn each other's weaknesses and strengths. And for us, it easily just played itself out. Who had what strength where? And it rolled right into the positions. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But if you've got 2 egocentric individuals who want the title and aren't focused on the grand domain, well then, okay, you might not be a good fit for each other.
That's awesome. Who are you studying nowadays? Who are your mentors? Like, really, who are you researching and reading and observing?
That's a really good question. So a couple things. I'm not a big book reader. In fact, I hate books. I have what every salesperson have, which is the squirrel syndrome. You know what squirrel syndrome is, Connor?
Too much so. You want to know why my teachers hated me?
Because you had squirrel syndrome.
Because I had squirrel syndrome.
Exactly. Squirrel syndrome. Look, there's a squirrel. Oh,
right.
A squirrel. Look, there's a squirrel. Like we're in the middle of a conversation and look, there's a squirrel. Right.
The worst.
So that's the problem. And so I have squirrel syndrome. And with that in mind, books are very hard for me to consume. But I do consume tons and tons and tons of short form content, video and blogs. And a lot of the stuff that I consume now is all about scaling the business, and also super interesting marketing tactics for growth acceleration. So those are the things that I'm focused on, and most of it is based upon the needs of the business. And then there are certain things that, frankly, I don't care about. Like, for example, we have a legal team, and the legal team was asking me information about a trademark, and I'm like, they want to meet, and I'm like, do I have to meet? Like, can't you just tell me? Like, because I really don't, like, there's certain things I want to invest in, and there's other things that I don't want to invest in. So the fact of the matter is that we need to understand that the needs of the business change, and that we should begin to surround ourselves with either book reading material, video content, or short form blogs to be able to help us grow in those areas.
Any favorite business book for this year, like growth, that you would recommend?
The one that I did read, which was one of the few books, is Growth IQ by Tiffany Bova. And I did really enjoy that book. She did a very good job at laying out many different stories from like Starbucks and Sephora and other companies, and told stories and laid those things out to help people understand that growth is not necessarily a linear line. It might be this way and this way. And sometimes you really got to think through that creative element to be able to make you get from here to here. So I will say that was one of the books that I did read in my last 5 years, probably one of the only ones that I read cover to cover.
Other than that, just short content that you can find, get a hold of.
Video and short content. Me and YouTube, they know me well. They know me well.
Is there any companies or individuals that you really follow on LinkedIn or study pretty closely?
Well, all of our sales, sales influencers that were, part of a community, and I watch their content. I do have a number of different pods that I'm a part of, and these pods have all the sales influencers, and we share content inside that to be able to really help and grow each other. So folks like Sherry Leviton, as an example, that's someone that I truly respect. David Merriman Scott, he's also on our advisory board. Joe Terry, he's also on our advisory board. We look at some of the other sales influencers that are out there that I respect. Victor Antonio, right, as an example. These are some guys that I really respect in the industry that have got some great slants on things that they're doing and their perception and perspective that I really do respect a lot.
I love it. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time, man. It's been great having you here. Is there anything else that's really just strategy takeaways that's top of mind for you that you want to hit on before we wrap up?
Well, listen, I mean, a lot of the folks that are listening in are business leaders and sales leaders, and they're struggling and trying to figure out ways to be able to grow their business. At the end of the day, the most important thing we need to be thinking about is be where the buyer is at and engage with the buyer the way the buyer wants us to engage. And if you don't know what that is, no problem. There's a lot of resources that are out there, including Vingresso, including companies like Active Blogs, your company, that is helping marketing leaders and sales leaders to be able to get that. So make sure that you figure out what that direction is, and then you just go hard on that. And the people in your organization, if they're not sold on the mission and they're not going hard in a certain direction, and they're making excuses as to why they can't do something, why it can't be done, it's impossible to do this. If you hear those types of words, then they're probably not the right fit for the organization. And agree that they're not the right fit. Have a great amicable separation and find somebody who will help you get to wherever it is you want to go.
Love it. And the best way to get into contact with you, follow you, find you?
Make sure you say you heard me with Connor on this particular podcast. Send a personalized connection request through LinkedIn. I'll be happy to connect with you. And then, of course, Vingresso.com. That's V as in Victor, ENGRESO. And the last thing I'll say, Connor, is next month we're launching our first SaaS application. It's sexy, it's hot, and it is a huge void in the sales industry. It's something that we've been struggling with and that our customers have been struggling with. So make sure you subscribe to the Vengresso blog. We're starting to build up some information around it. What can I say? Think fast. Think repeatable messaging. Think, how do I use and push stuff out to my sales field to be able to give them the right plays and the right playbooks? It's super sexy. It's hot, and I'm really excited about it.
I like it. I like the little sprinkle tease in there. Now you got everybody like following closely. That's awesome, man. I'm excited. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. I'm sure it'll be great and phenomenal. And again, thank you for being phenomenal and being a mentor for us and sharing your time with us today. And on that note, all of you guys listening, make sure you subscribe on all your favorite podcast apps, wherever you're tuning in, and leave a 5-star review so others can find the show too. And we will see you over on the next one.
Yeah.